Hey, how's it going? I'm Ron.
I'm Zach.
We're from Widetrack, and we're here on the new episode of Influences. And this week, we are continuing our top 5 lists by decade. And this week, we are going with the 90s, right?
Yes, we are.
So, the 90s was a great explosion of music, a total rejuvenation to the rock scene and beyond. And so we have compiled our favorites. So Zach, why don't you kick this one off with your number 5?
Don't mind if I do. Well, my number 5 is bit of a cheat because you can't really pick. Well, maybe you could, but I can't really pick. The first 3 Rage Against the Machine albums. To me, the reason, 3 albums is like quite a bit to cram into one spot, but the reason that I do this is because, Rage Against the Machine had become kind of notorious for their, repetitive riffs, the, same sort of da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na, whatever type of riffs, and I think all 3 of the albums have definitely some of that, but they've got songs that are different. And whenever you hear one of their songs that are like a lot different from all the other ones, like be it whatever song,
Sleep Now in the Fire, Mic Check, stuff like that.
Guerrilla Radio, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam. It's
they
like
were more diverse than they get credit for.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's really, really cool to see how different a lot of their songs are outside of the mainstream Rage Against the Machine, So, if I were to pick one album, it just wouldn't be right because, their whole, run of 3 albums is like really the definitive Rage Against the Machine.
Strong run for sure. Great. All 3 I couldn't pick between the 3 of them. They're all phenomenal. And they had a covers album that came out.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah, their 4th album, and that's great too.
Yeah.
So they're 4 for 4 in my book. So good choice. My number 5 pick is, so far in all these lists, the only non-rock album, and but then again, it is a little bit rock. It's by a R&B singer, otherwise known as Neo Soul. His name's Maxwell, and he had an album that came out in 96, I believe, 97 maybe, called Embrya. And this album is, it's really interesting album to me personally. My brother was a big fan of Maxwell's first album, and then the second album came out, and it kind of veered away from the typical R&B soul category and went into a bit of psychedelic territory, and the results are really great. I don't think the album sold very well for him, and he subsequently went back to more of a R&B approach, but this was a nice little bit of lightning in the bottle, in my opinion. And the songs just have a really cool vibe, and as I said, a real kind of psychedelic feel. A lot of guitar swells and really cool percussion, real airy atmosphere around the album. So that's my number 5 pick, Maxwell Embrya.
Alright, my number 4 pick is the debut Queens of the Stone Age album. Though the only real hit song or song that'll be known, as well as their other hits like No One Knows, Make It With You, Little Sister, Sat by the Ocean, would be Mexicola. I still feel that this album is one of their best. Many people do. I'm personally a fan of the halfway Caius sort of desert rock and the halfway Queens of the Stone Age mainstream-ish psychedelic type rock, you know. it's just kind of the beauty of Queens of the Stone Age, in its blossoming. You know, which album's very kind of deserty and dry, but it's not like Songs for the Deaf, where it's deserty and dry. It's more of like claustrophobic spiders. Desert.
Yeah, they still weren't quite fully Queens of the Stone Age yet, were they? On that first album, there's still a lot of Caius feel about it.
Yeah, it can be argued that Rated R is when they finally broke through and became their own. But as far as 1990s goes, I mean, it's 99, so it's really cutting it. But debut Queens of the Stone Age album is up there.
Great album. My number 4. We're already on number 4. Is by a band called Blind Melon, and it's their second album, Soup. The first 2 Blind Melon albums are the only 2 that were made while singer Shannon Hoon was alive. He died in 1995 of a heroin overdose, another casualty to the rock's lifestyle. But they broke through with their first album with the hit single No Rain, and they kind of got pigeonholed with the whole B-Girl video and everything. But that first album is really good, and the B-Girl thing just kind of misrepresents what the band was about. Whether you like the song or not, it's not super indicative of what the band was like. When they put their second album out, they worked with producer Mike Wallace, and he just transformed their sound to just a really wonderful, organically precise production. And for me personally, the album is almost flawless. It's just about every song on it is just amazing, and the band was just firing on all cylinders. The album just totally blows my mind to this day. It's one of the best examples of 2 guitar players playing together in a really cool way, and each doing their own thing. And a band that just isn't going by formula to sell. And as a result, their second album didn't sell nearly as good as the first one, having the B-Girl single on it. But I feel personally, and I know I'm in the minority on this one, but I feel the second one blows away the first one in a big way. So I just really lament to think about what the next Blind Melon album would have been like with Shannon Hoon. It would have been just astounding. But unfortunately, this is all we have. So that's my number 4, Blind Melon, Soup.
All right, my number 3. Starts getting down to the wire here. My number 3 is Anima, Tool. And this album is, it's a definitive prog rock, metal, wherever you
Masterpiece.
Classify it. Masterpiece. It's great. It's the magic of Tool and its finest prime moments. I mean, it's a collection of absolute handcrafted, aged for 30 million years masterpieces.
That's when Justin Chancellor joined the band on bass, and that
it was the album after Undertow, where because their old bass player, his name escapes
Paul
me.
Diamore, something.
Yeah. Wasn't really into what they were going for, and so when Justin joined the band, they said, "Well, guys, now we can prog. Let's go," and prog they did.
Yeah, that album, you kind of stole it from my list, but I just have to mention it's up there with all these for me too. That's my favorite Tool album.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say mine too.
Although a Tool album each one is its own event, and
the saying "once in a blue moon" and "once in a Tool album" works too. So.
Indeed. Well, my number three is Stone Temple Pilots' Tiny Music Songs from the Vatican Gift Shop. That's a mouthful. Um, this was the Stone Temple Pilots' third album as well. They had put out their first album, Core, with Plush and Wicked Garden and Creep and all that. And then they put out their second album, Purple, which had Vaseline and Interstate Love Song.
And is their, I believe, most commercially successful. Well, that and Core kind of
Yeah, they
even out.
they started indicating with the second album that they had a little bit more depth than the usual grunge, heavy rock stuff. But on their third album, they just blew it wide open. Totally took me by surprise. Um, I think that album is just phenomenal. It really took them out of the, yeah, these guys are just a regular grunge band, and into the, no, these guys are one of the leading bands of their generation. I saw them on that tour in 1997, and they were just amazing. Just an amazing show. And the thing that really struck me was, by that point, they had a lot of songs that they played in concert, because most of their songs are pretty short.
And they had a lot of hits too. Like,
yeah, and I just
off the first album alone, you can kind of hear Creep, Wicked Garden,
Dead and Bloated, Plush. Yeah, I sat there and just, wow, these guys are just hitting me with one after the other. They're really
like,
the
you know,
real
like
deal.
The Beatles.
Yeah.
Right? How they can just go.
Yeah, they'll fill up a whole night with songs you recognize. But Tiny Music was arguably their most artistic album and their most adventurous. And unfortunately, that's when Scott Weiland was deepest into his heroin addiction.
Which we, for the sake of being good musicians and moving past the musicians, good citizens, we are going to say, no, the heroin did not make the album good.
No. But
Heroin's
the
bad.
album is great. So you be the judge. But that's my number 3.
All right. We're getting heavy duty now. Number 2. My number 2 is one of my favorite albums. It is by a smaller Canadian band, I Mother Earth. Their debut album, Dig, is one of my favorite albums of all time. This album, it has a bunch of cool songs. It's, you know, like one after the other, the songs are cool, but moving past that to a wider view, the feel of the album is the likes of which have never been seen before. You know, it's like a mixture of funk, Middle Eastern percussion, and grunge, and it's like, it's amazing because you almost think it was like you know, these guys were doing a whole other type of music before you know, having the type of scene and you know, public music radio taste seep into their music, and it definitely doesn't hurt them at all. It's like seeing those two genres mixed together in such a fluent way is one of the wonders of music. You know, it's like some of the greatest albums are just cocktails of different genres, and this is a prime example of one. They're jammy. They're I Mother Earth.
I was fortunate enough to see them at a theater on that tour. Sorry.
It's okay. I forgive you.
But they were amazing live. They had a bit of a Santana vibe about them, but just imagine if Santana decided to be a psychedelic hard rock band. Jag Tanner, I believe, was the guitar player's name, and he is one of my favorite guys. He's probably the single most underrated guitar player in rock. It's criminal that the guy is not recognized.
Now, we have to come to a quick decision here. Very fast thinking. Do we spoil the ultimate surprise about his guitar playing, or do we let the people at home take a look-see for themselves out of curiosity?
Oh, I would definitely give people a little taste of what you're talking about.
Fair enough. His whole sort of gimmick, you could say, is he slaps on the guitar, and it's tasteful. It's tasteful and it's skillful. It's
like the bass player does the pa-pa-pa-pa-pa. He does it on the guitar. It's one of many skills that he just employs so tastefully, and everything he does is just like, oh my God, that sounds beautiful. Even if you're not a guitar player, lover, kind of,
it's just
so
like
nice.
It's one of those things where it's like it just sounds good.
Yeah, it just sounds so good. So check them out. Their second album is really good too. Their second one, Scenery and Fish. But the first album, Dig, by I, Mother Earth, that's a great one. Good choice. My second one is by the Black Crowes. Their 1994 album, I believe, and it's called Amorica.
Period.
Period.
In all lowercase.
Yes. The first two Black Crowes albums are bona fide classics. They're just pristine, amazing albums. But the third one is the one that really grabbed me, and I think those first three Black Crowes albums are quintessential, but the third one is Amorica is the one that just it's the perfect album, just about. There's not enough I can say about it. I listened to it time and time again.
Describe, not only for me, but for the people at home, describe what the album is reminiscent of.
Well, they take the certain elements of Southern rock, but they don't. But they're not like a Southern rock band. They're very Led Zeppelin-esque. They're kind of jam band oriented, but more so they are great songwriters. The songs are all amazing. And that was the thing about the Black Crowes is, they were called a hippie band or they were called a Southern rock. They are a great songwriting band. And this album was like, here's how you write great songs. You even get some played on the radio, but without compromising. And the instrumentation and everything is impeccably tasteful. It is some of the most tasteful, soulful music you will ever hear in rock and roll. It is no secret why Jimmy Page said, I want you guys to be my backup band for my tour and play Led Zeppelin songs. Another amazing.
And I mean, like, I really hope it's no surprise why they said, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my number 2, Black Crowes, Amorica.
Now the time has come. But for the number 1 spot, it's undeniable. We couldn't do the disservice of robbing each other of this number 1 spot.
Yeah.
This glory must be shared.
Yeah, we are sharing the number 1.
Between the both of us, we have come to an agreement that the number 1 best album of the 90s, in our opinion, is Badmotorfinger by Soundgarden.
Yeah. The best singing in rock and roll on that album. In hard rock.
I would make a
controversial statement, I know, but go online, listen to the isolated tracks of Chris Cornell singing Rusty Cage, or for the love of God, Jesus Christ Pose, or Face Pollution, or whatever. He is a force of nature on that album. Complete game changer. You thought you were a great singer until you heard that album, and he mops the floor with everybody. That what a statement.
How do you do that?
The songs
not only
are
that,
great. Staples.
I think an important thing to mention is Matt Cameron is also the drummer of Pearl Jam. Yeah. But in Soundgarden, it's also kind of noted by Pearl Jam fans. He plays with a lot more like energy and just like dynamicy. It's
some of the best rock drumming ever is Matt Cameron on Badmotorfinger.
It's unbelievable. It's like
phenomenal.
You listen to it and you say, "There it is. That's what goes there."
Yep.
And it's like it's not complex and like 7/8 sort of whatever, but
But they do move around in some odd time signatures.
It's like trying to play it is unbelievable. I mean, but listening to it, it feels natural, you know. And I think that's another sort of one of the coolest little gems that you'll find is that when you hear something and you say, "Man, that sounds really, really like fine, like an odd time that sounds like even, or that just feels fine," you know, where you couldn't even tell it was in an odd time even. That stuff's cool, and Soundgarden is, you know, not your average grunge band. In fact, you know, they
were out there before any of the grunge bands.
Quite the extraordinary.
They're the godfathers of that scene, and rightly so. They you know, everybody's got. Some people love Alice in Chains, some people love Pearl Jam, some people love Nirvana, etc., etc. But Soundgarden are in a class all their own. And it's acknowledged by all those bands. Chris Cornell is just he's a rock god singer. May he rest in peace. You know, what a tragic loss this year. But he has left behind such an amazing body of work that...
A legacy to be surpassed by
it will
few,
not
if
be
any.
surpassed. It will be in the annals of history just as... Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or the Stones. It's beyond reproach.
And Chris Cornell is a front man to sidetrack from the album Badmotorfinger is such an amazing just front man in general, as we've stated multiple times before. He has an uncountable amount of bands, so much live stuff that's just out there. He, you know, like had a solo album produced by Timbaland. No one really liked, and he said, "All right, I'll just make another one."
Yeah, that's something I tried.
That's what I was feeling. Worked a little bit,
didn't work great. I'll make another one.
And it's, you know, it's.
He was an adventurous spirit
and that's
a true blue craftsman. And back in the days of Badmotorfinger, and you got to think, okay, the album before Badmotorfinger was Louder Than Love, and it's a great album, but his singing was quite a bit. His voice, something happened to his,
you know, it was thinner in the beginning.
A lot thinner sounding, and when they did Badmotorfinger, it was like somebody turned the Marshall amp in his throat up, like to
11.
To 11, yeah. And you know, the thing with Badmotorfinger also is bass. That's the first album that bassist Ben Shepherd joined the band on, and he was a big contributor to the songwriting.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite Soundgarden song, Head Down, was written by him. So I mean,
yeah, he was a big part of Face Pollution, and the whole band kind of contributed to Jesus Christ Post. Kim Thayil's guitar work is amazing.
Room 1,000 Years Wide.
He plays guitar parts with his freaking beard, you know, for Pete's sake. I mean, the guy is great. What a band, what an album. That's our number one pick. So, anyhow, we're down to the honorable mentions. And your honorable mention is a good segue to your honorable mention, I suppose.
Well, my honorable mention, because it didn't feel right being my favorite Soundgarden song is on the album, Super Unknown is my honorable mention. I know it's another Soundgarden album. We already mentioned Soundgarden, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But it's like, it's Soundgarden, man.
Super Unknown has got to be mentioned. You know, it's...
One of my favorite quotes ever about Soundgarden is, Badmotorfinger captured the sparkle. Super Unknown brought it to the light. Super Unknown was the real mainstream, what got Soundgarden its righteous listening. You know, Spoon Man, Black Hole Sun, and they're good songs. They're not their best songs, but they attributed to a lot of what really made Soundgarden, you know, available to the public ear. So,
a lot of people would say Super Unknown is Soundgarden's best album, defining moment, and it would be hard to argue with that.
I gotta say, it's a fairly big album, and some of the songs are pretty hit or miss, but there are some good songs. Like
Let Me Drown, Head Down.
Head Down's one of my favorite. Day I Tried to Live is another one of my favorites.
It's Fell on Black Days, My Wave, the list goes on and on with that album. It was a phenomenal album. Yeah, Mailman.
This is also around the time where everyone was starting to copy Chris Cornell and grow their hair out nice and long, so he decided, I don't really need this anymore, and he cut it all off, and so everyone was like, ah.
Yeah, he was definitely not going to milk any sort of image thing. He wanted it to be about the music, and it was a brave move. All the ladies were like, "Oh my God, why did you cut your beautiful hair, Chris?" He's like,
is there any on eBay?
The music will do the talking. Thank you very much. And but good choice. Good choice.
The waiver. Okay, moving on.
My honorable mention is an album by Peter Gabriel called Us. It came out in 1992. It was the follow-up to his hugely successful So album, which came out in 1987. And Us is just a beautiful album. It's one that I can just put on any song. And the thing about Peter Gabriel is he was only putting out albums every 10 years. He was even worse than Tool in that regard.
Once in the Peter Gabriel album, will you see a Tool album?
Yep, Tool, a lot of people don't know that Peter Gabriel did it first. So anyhow, there's a couple great songs on that album. 14 Black Paintings is a real moody thing I like. Love to Be Loved is a great deep cut by Peter Gabriel. Just an awesome album. So
anyways, we thank you for sticking around. This has been quite a long one, but rightfully so. I mean, how could we possibly limit anything that we say about these magnificent bands and albums? I mean, it's just not fair. It's not fair, I tell you.
The 90s had some great music. We left out a lot of stuff, the Jeff Buckleys, the Pearl Jams, the Alice in Chains, whatever your favorites are out there. We would like to hear from you.
Yes.
Let us know what your favorite stuff is in the 90s. I know that that's a big thing for a lot of people, so it's a last.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what you guys are into, because I'm sure it's going to be all stuff of like, oh, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, great stuff out there. So if you haven't done it yet, feel free to subscribe to our channel here, and if you want to keep up with our goings on in Widetrack, we got a new album coming out. I'm actually going to mix the very last song tonight, and you can hit us up, join our email list at widetrackmusic.com. And we'd love to hear from you in any way. Hit me up at ron@widetrackmusic.com. And Zach is available to respond there as well. So
I will. I'm kidding.
Anyhow, hope you guys are doing great. Until the next time, keep on rocking.